Hey, it's Baloo. So Belle said that it was okay to have guest contributions for her book club, and I haven't read any of this stuff, so I just wanted somebody to choose for me. And Anarchy Time picked Mutual Aid by Peter, and I'm going to say this funny. I can't say it right now. Kropotkin. Kropotkin. So we're just going to dive right in, and I've never read any of this. It's Chapter 1, Mutual Aid Among Animals. Struggle for existence. Mutual aid. A law of nature and chief factor of progressive evolution. Invertebrates. Ants and bees. Birds. Hunting and fishing associations. Sociability. Mutual protection among small birds. Cranes. Parrots. The conception of struggle for existence as a factor of evolution, introduced into science by Darwin and Wallace, has permitted us to embrace an immensely wide range of phenomena in one single generalization, which soon became the very basis of our philosophical, biological, and sociological speculations. An immense variety of facts, adaptations of function and structure of organic beings to their surroundings, physiological and anatomical evolution, intellectual progress and moral development itself, which we formerly used to explain by so many different causes, were embodied by Darwin in one general conception. We understood them as continued endeavors, as a struggle against adverse circumstances, for such a development of individuals, races, species, and societies as would result in the greatest possible fullness, variety, and intensity of life. It may be that at the outset Darwin himself was not fully aware of the generality of the factor which he first invoked for explaining one series only of facts relative to the accumulation of individual variations in incipient species. But he foresaw that the term which he was introducing into science would lose its philosophical and its only true meaning if it were to be used in its narrow sense only, that of a struggle between separate individuals for the sheer means of existence. And at the very beginning of his memorable work, he insisted upon the term being taken in its, quote, large and metaphorical sense, including dependence on one being on another, and including, which was more important, not only the life of the individual, but success in leaving progeny. While he himself was chiefly using the term in its narrow sense for his own special purpose, he warned his followers against committing the error, which he seems once to have committed himself, of overrating its narrow meaning. In The Descent of Man, he gave some powerful pages to illustrate its proper wide sense. He pointed out how, in numberless animal societies, the struggle between separate individuals for the means of existence disappears, how struggle is replaced by cooperation, and how the substitution results in the development of intellectual and moral faculties which secure to the species the best conditions of survival. He intimated that in such cases the fittest are not the physically strongest, nor the cunningest, but those who learn to combine so as mutually to support each other, strong and weak alike, for the welfare of the community. Those communities, he wrote, which included the greatest number of the most sympathetic members would flourish best and rear the greatest number of offspring. The term, which originated from the narrow Malthusian conception of competition between each and all, thus lost its narrowness in the mind of one who knew nature. Unhappily, these remarks, which might have become the basis of the most fruitful researches, were overshadowed by the masses of facts gathered for the purpose of illustrating the consequences of a real competition for life. Besides, Darwin never attempted to submit to a closer investigation the relative importance of the two aspects under which the struggle for existence appears in the animal world, and he never wrote the work he proposed to write upon the natural checks to overmultiplication, although that work would have been the crucial test for appreciating the real purport of individual struggle. Nay, on the pages just mentioned, amidst data disproving narrow Malthusian conception of struggle, the old Malthusian leaven reappeared, namely, in Darwin's remarks as to the alleged inconveniences of maintaining the, quote, weak in mind and body in our civilized societies. As if thousands of weak-bodied and infirm poets, scientists, inventors, and reformers, together with other thousands of so-called fools and weak-minded enthusiasts, were not the most precious weapons used by humanity in its struggle for existence by intellectual and moral arms, which Darwin himself emphasized in those same chapters of Descent of Man. It happened with Darwin's theory, as it always happens with theories having any bearing upon human relations. Instead of widening it according to his own hints, his followers narrowed it still more. And while Herbert Spencer, starting on independent but closely allied lines, attempted to widen the inquiry into that great question, who are the fittest, especially in the appendix to the third edition of the Data of Ethics, the numberless followers of Darwin reduced the notion of struggle for existence to its narrowest limits. They came to conceive the animal world as a world of perpetual struggle among half-starved individuals, thirsting for one another's blood. They made modern literature resound with the war cry of "Woe to the vanquished," as if it were the last word of modern biology. They raised the pitiless struggle for personal advantages to the height of a biological principle which man must submit to as well, under the menace of otherwise succumbing in a world based upon mutual extermination. Leaving aside the economists who know of natural science but a few words borrowed from second-hand vulgarizers, we must recognize that even the most authorized exponents of Darwin's views did their best to maintain those false ideas. In fact, if we take Huxley, who certainly is considered as one of the ablest exponents of the theory of evolution, were we not taught by him in a paper on the struggle for existence and its bearing upon man that, quote, "From the point of view of the moralist, the animal world is on about the same level as a gladiator's show. The creatures are fairly well treated and set to fight, hereby the strongest. The swiftest and the cunningest live to fight another day. The spectator has no need to turn his thumb down, as no quarter is given." Or, further down in the same article, did he not tell us that, as among animals, so among primitive men, quote, "The weakest and stupidest went to the wall, while the toughest and shrewdest, those who were best fitted to cope with their circumstances, but not the best in another way, survived. Life was a continuous free fight, and beyond the limited and temporary relations of the family, the Hobbesian war of each against all was the normal state of existence." All right, I'm going to keep going. In how far this view of nature is supported by fact will be seen from the evidence which will be here submitted to the reader as regards the animal world and as regards primitive man. But it may be remarked at once that Huxley's view of nature had as little claim to be taken as scientific deduction as the opposite view of Rousseau, who saw in nature but love, peace, and harmony destroyed by the accession of man. In fact, the first walk in the forest, the first observation upon any animal society, or even the perusal of any serious work dealing with animal life, cannot but set the naturalist thinking about the part taken by social life in the life of animals, and prevent him from seeing in nature nothing but a field of slaughter, just as this would prevent him from seeing in nature nothing but harmony and peace. Rousseau had committed the error of excluding the beak and claw fight from his thoughts, and Huxley committed the opposite error. But neither Rousseau's optimism nor Huxley's pessimism can be accepted as an impartial interpretation of nature. As soon as we study animals, not in laboratories and museums only, but in the forest and the prairie, in the steppe and the mountains, we at once perceive that though there is an immense amount of warfare and extermination going on amidst various species, and especially amidst various classes of animals, there is, at the same time, as much or perhaps more of mutual support, mutual aid, and mutual defense amidst animals belonging to the same species, or at least to the same society. Sociability is as much a law of nature as mutual struggle. Of course, it would be extremely difficult to estimate, however roughly, the relative numerical importance of both these series of facts. But if we resort to an indirect test and ask nature, who are the fittest, those who are continually at war with each other or those who support one another, we at once see that those animals which acquire habits of mutual aid are undoubtedly the fittest. They have more chances to survive, and they attain, in their respective classes, the highest development of intelligence and bodily organization. If the numberless facts which can be brought forward to support this view are taken into account, we may safely say that mutual aid is as much a law of animal life as mutual struggle, but that, as a factor of evolution, it most probably has a far greater importance, inasmuch as it favors the development of such habits and characters as ensure the maintenance and further development of the species, together with the greatest amount of welfare and enjoyment of the life for the individual with the least waste of energy. Okay, that seems like a pretty good place to stop, just offhand. Let's see here. Yeah, so just to close that out, that's not the first chapter at all. There's still quite a bit more. And I know I was a little choppy there, but this is how I'm going to give it to you, warts and all, as if we were in the same room and I picked up something that I'd never seen before and started reading it aloud. I'm not going to read any further until I record it again, so we're going to be hearing some of these words for the first time together. And I think it's going to be a good time, but that's how you're going to get it. Just warts and all. My big takeaway, I feel like some of this could have been put a little bit more simply, but there is a certain elegance to the way that he writes, and I'm enjoying that, but also quite a bit of it's over my head just to start. Some of these references to other works that I haven't read, but I'm looking forward to seeing more. All right, take it easy.